It was a Thursday night when I decided to take the back roads home from my sister's place. Gas station coffee jittering through my veins, headlights cutting through the fog like two dull knives. You know how it is. Windows down, radio humming static because the signal out near Briar Creek's always half dead. I remember the smell of wet pine, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. That's when I saw her. A girl in a white dress, standing barefoot on the shoulder of the road. No car in sight, no house for miles. Just her, glowing under the moon like a moth caught in a jar. I slowed down because what kind of monster drives past someone stranded out there? Her hair was black as oil, tangled down her back, and her eyes, God, her eyes were wrong. Too wide, too dark, like holes punched into her face. Need a ride? I called out, rolling the passenger window down. She didn't speak, just nodded and slid into the seat, her dress rustling like dry leaves. The car suddenly smelled like river mud, that sour decay you find in stagnant water. I tried to make small talk. Where you headed? She pointed ahead, her finger trembling. Home, she whispered. Her voice sounded frayed, like a recording played too many times. I nodded and hit the gas. The radio sputtered. A newscaster's voice cut through the buzz. Anniversary of the Briar Creek disappearance tonight. Clara Myers, 17, vanished October 31st, 1987. Last seen wearing... The static swallowed the rest. I glanced at her. White dress, bare feet, a locket shaped like a teardrop around her neck. You from around here? I asked, too loud. She turned her head slowly. Too slowly. You're warm, she said, ignoring me. Her breath fogged in the air, though the heater was blasting. So warm. My knuckles whitened on the wheel. The trees outside seemed to press closer, skeletal fingers scraping the roof. I focused on the road, just drive, just get her home, but the asphalt kept twisting, familiar turns replaced by a narrow dirt path I'd never seen. Where are we? My voice cracked. The shortcut, she said. A smile crept across her lips. No teeth. Just blackness. The radio died. The engine stuttered. And then I saw it. A crumbling farmhouse at the end of the lane, silhouetted by a sickly green moon. Rotting porch steps, windows boarded up, a no trespassing sign dangling by one nail. Stop, she said. I slammed the brakes. The car lurched, and for a heartbeat, everything was still. Then she grabbed my wrist. Her fingers were freezing, burning cold. Thank you for the ride, she said, leaning in close. Up close, her locket swung open, a tiny photo inside. A girl who looked just like her, but older. Hollow-eyed. Dead. She let go and slipped out of the car, up her dress dissolving into the fog. I didn't breathe until she reached the porch. Then the boards creaked. The door groaned open, and something in the darkness moved, a shadow taller than the house, jagged and hungry. I floored it. Tires screaming, heart jackhammering. The rearview mirror showed the farmhouse shrinking until her face suddenly filled the glass, lips pressed against it from the back seat. You forgot something, I screamed. The car swerved. When I looked again, the mirror was empty, but on the passenger seat lay a locket, the same teardrop shape, same photo inside. I threw it out the window, drove until the sun rose. But here's the thing about ghosts. They don't let go. That night, I woke up to dripping water. Plink, plink, plink. Coming from the bathroom, I found the sink on full blast, brown liquid reeking of algae, and floating in the basin, strands of black hair. The locket appeared on my dresser the next morning. I tried to ditch it, buried it in the yard, tossed it into a lake, burned it. It always came back, damp and cold, photo grinning up at me. Then the whispers started. Not in my ears. In my head. You're warm. Let me in. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating. My reflection looked wrong. Paler, darker circles under my eyes. Like her. Last night, I snapped, grabbed a shovel and drove back to Briar Creek. Found the farmhouse. The door swung open before I knocked. Inside, the air was thick with the stench of wet earth and something sweet. Rotting flowers. A staircase spiraled into the dark. I followed it, shovel raised, until I reached a basement. Candles flickered in a circle, and in the center, a coffin. Lid cracked open. I don't know what made me look inside. She was there. Clara. White dress yellowed with age, hair matted with dirt, but her eyes, still wide, still black, still... Her hand shot up, skeletal fingers clawing my arm. You're late, she hissed. The coffin yawned wider, the shadows inside squirming. But you'll do. I swung the shovel, her skull cracked like porcelain. She screamed, a sound that wasn't human, and the house shook. I ran, didn't look back. Now I'm home. The locket's on my pillow. The whispers are louder. And when I close my eyes, I see it, the farmhouse. Waiting. The thing in the dark. patient. They say Clara hitchhikes every October 31st, searching for warmth to keep her grave quiet. But she doesn't want a ride anymore. She wants a replacement.
Story number 2.
The tires blew out somewhere outside Flagstaff, leaving me stranded on a stretch of desert highway, so empty it felt like the edge of the world. No cell service, no stars, just the hiss of winds scraping sand against the rental car's windows. That's when I saw the flicker of neon through the dust. A motel sign, rusted and crooked, buzzing like a dying wasp. Nightfall Inn. Vacancy. I shouldn't have gone in. The lobby smelled like mothballs and burnt coffee. Behind the front desk sat an old man with skin like cracked leather, reading a newspaper dated October 31st, 1976. He didn't look up when I walked in, just slid a key across the counter, its tag stained with something dark. "Room 13, he said. His voice sounded like gravel in a tin can. "Don't answer the door after midnight." I laughed. Nervous, you know? What, is this place haunted or something? He finally lifted his head. His eyes were milky, pupils shriveled to pinpricks. "Or something," he said. The room was worse. Peeling wallpaper, a bed sagging like a broken spine, and a TV with a cracked screen. But the door locked, and the AC wheezed out lukewarm air, so I tossed my bag on the bed. That's when I noticed the stains on the carpet. Rust-colored, smeared in arcs like someone had been dragged. I told myself it was wine. Midnight hit, and the knocking started. Tap, tap. 3 polite raps on the door. I froze, the motel's warning ringing in my skull. The peephole showed nothing but the flickering hallway light. "Hello?" I called out. A child's voice answered, high and sweet. "Let me in, mister. I'm scared." My hand hovered over the deadbolt. "Kid, you shouldn't be out here alone. Please," she whimpered. "It's coming." I cracked the door open. The hallway was empty. Just that flickering bulb and the stench of something rotten like meat left in the sun. Then I saw it, a shadow pooling at the far end of the hall, thickening, rising until it loomed taller than the ceiling. No face, no features, just a void shaped like a man, if a man could stretch and warp like taffy. I slammed the door. The child's voice giggled, now inches from the wood. Too late. The TV blared to life behind me, static screaming. I spun around. The screen wasn't cracked anymore. It showed grainy footage of this same room, this same night. Me, standing frozen, as the shadow slid under the door. In the video, I didn't turn around. In the video, the shadow peeled off the floor and swallowed me whole. I yanked the TV's plug from the wall. The screen went black. But the air got heavy, like diving into deep water. I felt it before I saw it. The cold, the kind. It was freezes your lungs. Didn't look. I couldn't look. I dove for the bathroom, locked myself inside, and pressed my back against the door. My breath came in ragged gasps. The sink faucet turned on by itself, water gushing brown and thick. When I looked up, words crawled across the fogged mirror, scrawled in something red. "You should have run!" The door handle jiggled. "Open up, mister," the child cooed. "We just want to play." Something scratched at the wood. Not nails. Claws. I climbed out the bathroom window, tearing my shirt on the broken screen. The parking lot was deserted, my rental car gone. Only the manager's pickup truck remained, its tires flat, hood sprouting weeds. The motel sign buzzed louder, neon bleeding red down the walls. Room doors creaked open as I ran. Figures stood in the threshold, silent, watching. A woman in a 50s housecoat, her neck bent sideways. A man in a suit, face melted like candle wax. A little girl in a blood-stained nightgown, holding a doll with no eyes. The manager waited at the front desk, still reading his paper. "Leaving so soon?" he said without looking up. "What is this place?" I shouted. He turned the page. "A rest stop for travelers who don't stay travelers." The shadow oozed into the lobby from the hall, its form rippling. The manager smiled for the first time, revealing teeth filed to points. "Checkouts at dawn." I bolted into the desert, sand stinging my eyes, the motel's neon glow fading behind me. I ran until my legs gave out, dawn bleeding pink over the horizon. That's when I saw it, a gas station, its lights warm and real. A trucker filling his rig eyed me as I stumbled to the payphone. "Help," I choked out to the 911 operator. "There's a motel out here, some kind of cult." "Sir," the operator interrupted, "where are you?" I read the address off the gas station sign. A long pause. Then softly, "Sir, that gas station burned down in 1989. There's nothing there." The line died. So did the lights. The trucker was gone. The gas station rotted, windows shattered, pumps rusted, skeletal, And down the road, the Nightfall Inn's neon sign flickered, patient as the desert sun began to rise. I know now. The motel doesn't exist. Not in the daylight. It's a crack between places, a wound that only opens when you're lost. And the thing inside it, it doesn't want your life. It wants your journey. They say if you drive through Arizona at night, you'll see the sign. It'll call to you, sweet as a lullaby. Don't stop. Don't slow down. Because once you check in, you check out different. The shadows in the corner of my eye now. Always. I see it in windows, in reflections, in the dark behind my eyelids. It's getting closer. The motel manager was right. Checkout's at dawn. But my dawn's coming. And when it does, I'll be the one behind the desk, sliding a key to the next traveler. Maybe yours.
Story number 3.
The air tastes like copper and burnt plastic. That's the first thing I notice when I wake up. Second thing, my hands are duct taped to a folding chair in the middle of a room I don't recognize. Concrete floor, flickering fluorescent lights, and a wall of old CRT televisions, each screen showing a different angle of my house. My kitchen, my bedroom, my shower. A man in a rabbit mask steps into view. Not the plastic kind you buy at a party store. This thing's sewn from actual fur, eye holes leaking strands of greasy gray hair. He tilts his head, voice distorted through a walkie-talkie clutched in his gloved hand. "You've been watching us," he says. The TVs switch to static, then snap to a new image. Me, sleeping. A red laser dot dancing over my chest. "Now we watch you." They'd been in my walls. For weeks, I'd heard scratching. Blamed it on squirrels. Found a chewed-up jacket in the attic, figured it was mice. But the smells, God, the smells! Rotting meat, ammonia. I'd light candles, spray Febreze, tell myself old houses settle. Turns out houses don't lick the condensation off basement pipes at 3 a.m. Rabbit mask circles me. A second figure appears. A woman in a moth costume, wings made of yellowed lace, antennae twitching with real insects trapped in the mesh. She drags a claw hammer along the concrete, sparks flying. "You should have answered the door when we knocked," she giggles. The TVs flash to my front porch camera footage. Last Tuesday, 2:17 a.m., a figure in a stag mask pressing a finger to the doorbell over and over. I'd been home, watching TV. I never heard a thing. "What do you want?" I shout, chair legs screeching as I twist. Moth woman leans in. Her mask is warm, breathing. "We want you to play." They call it the masquerade. A game, they say, for the disconnected generation. You get invited once, ignore it, and the masks come to collect their due. Rabbit Mask explains this while unspooling a hose from the ceiling. "You stare at screens," he says, nozzle hovering over my head, "but never see anything." Ice-cold water hits me, I gasp, and that's when I feel it. The current. Not water. Battery acid. It soaks my clothes, burns my skin. The TVs explode with light, each screen showing a different torture scene. A man drowning in a phone booth. A woman forced to swallow broken glass. A child, I look away. Rabbit Mask grabs my hair. "Watch, or you'll be next." They call it streaming. They've been doing this for years. Decades. Before dark web, before cable TV, Victorian aristocrats paid to watch these shows through peepholes and asylum walls. Now the masks run the feed. Subscribers vote on what happens next. Polls live. Moth woman says, tapping a cracked tablet. 62% say remove the teeth. Rabbit Mask pulls pliers from his jacket. I kick, tip the chair, crack my skull on the floor. The TVs swirl. When I blink, I'm somewhere else. A motel bathroom, shower curtain torn down, mirror shattered. My reflection stays behind in the glass, mouthing, "Run." I stumble into a hallway papered with old family photos. All of them include a masked figure lurking in the background. My graduation. My 6th birthday. My parents' wedding. Stag mask. Bear mask. Owl mask. Always watching. A door slams open. Stag Mask stands there, antlers scraping the ceiling. He's hurting me, chasing me toward a room where a noose swings from a ceiling fan. I skid, fall, crawl under a bed. The floor's sticky. I lift a dust ruffle and come face to face with the previous player. A girl, maybe 19, eyes gouged out, iPhone still recording in her stiff hand. "Found you," Stag Mask whispers, suddenly under the bed with me, fur smelling of wet dog and gasoline. I wake up back in the chair. New polls on the TVs. 87% peel the skin. 13% set fire. Rabbit Mask sighs. Democracy's a bitch. They're halfway through the peeling. A butter knife works better than you'd think when the power dies. All the TVs go black. The masks freeze. "They're here," Moth Woman hisses. "Impossible," Rabbit Mask snaps. "We paid the toll. A new sound fills the dark, wet, guttural breathing. Not human. The kind of noise that makes your testicles crawl back inside your body. The masks scramble. Mothwoman drops her hammer. Rabbit Mask fumbles with a keyring. Then the screaming starts. Something's in the room with us. I hear it rip through Mothwoman first, a sound like Velcro tearing, followed by hot rain on my face. Rabbit Mask makes it 3 steps before his head hits the floor, mask rolling to my feet. The last thing I see inside those eye holes, no face, just a black void, and tiny screens flickering deep inside. The creature doesn't touch me. It circles, sniffing before slamming a mangled paw on my chest. My ribs crack. My mind floods with images, a cave system under every major city, masked figures breeding these things in the dark, feeding them reality TV and Twitter feuds. The creatures grow fat on our outrage, our fear, our attention. You're a carrier now, it growls. Voice 100 overlapping influencers. Spread it. I wake up in my bed. No burns, no broken ribs. Just a new app on my phone. Mask TV, live. The first notification pops up as I'm making coffee. 87,432 viewers voted. Make her stare at the sun through binoculars. The binoculars are in my hands before I can scream. I'm told the surgery to remove my eyes was very clean. The masks visit sometimes. They don't need to hide now. I hear their claws click against my hospital floor, smell their rotten fur breath as they lean in. Ratings are through the roof. Rabbit Mask says. He's different now, younger, voice clearer. They let me keep one eye for the camera. Look, I know what you're thinking. Turn off the phone. Smash the screen. But it's too late. You read this, didn't you? Check the word count. Glanced at the clock. You thought, 1,700 words exactly. Clever. That's how it starts. The app's downloading now. Don't bother looking. It's in the walls.
Story number 4.
The third time I found Grandma's locket in my cereal bowl, I should have thrown it into the river, but it was the last thing she'd given me before the cancer took her. That tarnished silver heart she always wore. Keep it close, Ellie, she'd rasped in her final hours, her grip stronger than it had been in months. Or she'll find you. The first sign was the whispers. Not the hiss of old pipes in my apartment, actual words, faint and warped like a record played backward under the floorboards. Mine, that's mine. I blamed sleep deprivation. Grad school finals. Then the photos started. Every morning a new Polaroid appeared on my fridge, not modern prints, the thick, yellow-edged kind from the 70s. Each showed a woman in a lace-collared dress, standing in places I recognized. My campus library, the laundromat, the foot of my bed. Her face was always blurred, as if she'd turned just as the shutter clicked. But the locket around her neck was crystal clear. My locket. It's just some prank, my roommate Jess said when I showed her the third photo. She squinted at the woman's blurred features. Wait, doesn't this look like that old missing persons case? Clara somebody? They found her locket in a ditch back in... The microwave exploded. Not metaphorically. The glass plate shattered, the door flew off its hinges, and a smell like burnt hair filled the kitchen. Jess screamed. I didn't, because in the smoke for half a heartbeat, I saw her, the woman from the photos, her face finally visible. Beautiful. Hollow-cheeked, eyes blacker than oil spills, and her mouth, unhinged, jaw stretching wider than a snake's, filled with needles instead of teeth. Jess moved out the next day. Can't blame her. Grandma's instructions were in the locket. I discovered them by accident, pricking my finger on its clasp. My blood smeared the silver, and the heart split open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay a lock of hair, white, coarse, and a tiny scroll in Grandma's shaky cursive. Forgive me. I stole it from her grave in 61. Wear it always. If you take it off, she'll take you instead. The Polaroids got worse. Now the woman appeared in broad daylight, a smudge of black lace at the edge of my vision, the tap of heeled boots behind me in empty hallways. Strangers began giving me gifts. A butcher handed me a package of ribs wrapped in newspaper from 1961. A child gave me a doll with its face chewed off, whispering, "She's hungry." Last night, I cracked. I drove to St. Mary's Cemetery, where Grandma was buried, and dug up her locket's twin from the plot next to hers. Clara Voss, 1932 to 1961. Beloved daughter. The earth was soft, as if someone had already disturbed it. Inside Clara's coffin, I found no bones, just a nest of black lace, animal teeth, and hundreds of Polaroids, all of women wearing the locket. My mother, my grandmother, a girl who looked like me at 8 years old. The locket burned against my chest. I tried to rip it off. The chain held. You shouldn't have come here, Clara's voice oozed from the grave dirt. I turned. She stood under the cemetery gate, moonlight passing through her like smoke, her jaw unclicked, needle teeth gleaming. Grandma lied, she said. It doesn't protect you. It marks you. Little girls always taste sweeter when they're scared. I ran. Clara didn't chase me. She unfolded, a shadow stretching across the grass, faster than light, cold as a freezer door swinging open. Her fingers, too many, too long, grabbed my ankle. I fell, gravel cutting my palms, and did the only thing I could think of. I shoved Grandma's locket into my mouth. The scream that followed split the sky. Thunder cracked. Rain slammed down, acidic and reeking of rot. Clara recoiled, her form flickering. You ate her? She shrieked, voice splintering into a dozen howls. You stupid, desperate. I spat the locket onto the ground. It sizzled, silver now blackened, hair inside reduced to ash. Clara's shadow writhed, peeling apart like old film, until nothing remained but the Polaroids dissolving in the rain. I wish that was the end. This morning I found a new Polaroid taped to my door. No blurred woman. Just me, standing in the cemetery, mouth stretched wide around the locket. Behind me, barely visible in the dark, dozens of needle-toothed shadows crawl toward the edge of the frame. And in my throat, a new sensation. Something metallic, rattling when I breathe. When I cough, a single silver chain slithers into my palm. Grandma's voice whispers from my stomach. Good girl, now feed them.
Story number 5.
The first rule of Holloway Park after dark. Don't answer the voices. I learned that the hard way. They'd hired me as a seasonal ranger, fresh out of forestry school, eager to trade city smog for Colorado pines. The park closed November 1st, but some of us stayed to winterize the trails. My boss, Hank, left me a list. Drain pipes, board up the visitor center, and for God's sake, be past the north gate by sundown. Superstition, I'd scoffed, pocketing the key to the ranger station. The silence should have warned me. No coyotes, no wind, just the creak of the station's porch swing, chains rusted bloody. I spent my first night there journaling by firelight, ignoring the scratches on the walls, names carved deep, some older than the park itself. Elias, 1902, Marjorie, 1947, and newer, fresher cuts. Tell them you fell. Day 2, the radios died. All frequencies hissed the same phrase, whispered in overlapping voices. Heather, Heather, come outside. I didn't. Day 3, the footprints appeared. Bare human feet pressed into frost, circling the station. No tracks leading to or from them, as if someone had dropped from the sky. That night, something knocked. 3 slow raps, then a voice like gravel and honey. Let me in, sweetheart. I'm cold. Hank's voice. Except Hank was in Denver getting knee surgery. I'd driven him to the airport myself. I pressed against the door, breath fogging the peephole. The figure outside wore Hank's face, his Park Service jacket, but his eyes, pupils blown wide, black swallowing the blue. His smile split too far, revealing double rows of teeth, like shards of quartz. Found a hiker's leg near the falls, he said, holding up a boot with flesh still clinging to the ankle. Smells like pepperoni. I didn't scream, didn't move. The Hank thing waited an hour before trudging into the woods, whistling Camptown races. By dawn, I'd packed my truck. That's when I saw the girl. She stood at the tree line, maybe 8 years old, in a soaked yellow dress, no coat, no shoes. Her hair hung in icicle clumps. Help, she mouthed, pointing toward Blackroot Gorge. I knew the stories, kids who'd vanished on school trips, hikers who followed lost children into ravines. But logic short circuits when you see shivering lips, blue-tinged skin. I grabbed a blanket and ran. She led me half a mile before speaking. They're coming, she said, voice suddenly deep, gurgling. Don't turn around. I turned. They stood between the pines, dozens of them. Men, women, kids, all people I'd seen on missing posters, their jaws unhinged like snakes, throats bloated and pulsating. The girl's hand fused to mine, frostbite spreading up my arm. We've been waiting for a new throat, she burbled, her face melting into a featureless white orb. Yours echoes nicely. I did the only thing you can do when a shapeshifter impersonates a child. I shoved my flashlight down its gullet. The thing shrieked, a sound that crystallized the air. Frost bloomed across its skin as it recoiled. I ran, following the gorge's roar until I found the falls, now frozen mid-cascade. There, carved into the ice, were more names. Don't listen, don't look, don't breathe. The forest exhaled. Every tree, every rock, every blade of grass rippled, surfaces warping into faces. My mother's, my ex's, my own. They mimed screams, laughter, pleas. The real horror wasn't the creatures. It was the park itself, alive and hungry, using stolen voices to lure prey into its belly. I plunged into the frozen river, let the current drag me under the ice, through caverns where glowing fungi pulsed like dying stars. Corpses floated around me, throats distended, mouths frozen mid-song. The current spat me out at the north gate, where I vomited black water and things that wriggled. The rangers found me hypothermic, babbling. They called it psychosis. Gave me a pill bottle and a pink slip. But last night my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Heather? My own voice, raw and desperate, echoed through the line. Heather, come outside. I'm cold. Outside, frost gleamed on my driveway. Bare footprints led to the woods behind my apartment. I'm moving again tomorrow. Changing my name. But sometimes when the wind dies, I hear them, fragments of my stolen voice, stitching themselves into new lies. They say Holloway Park spans 80,000 acres. They're wrong. It's growing.
Story number 6.
The highway stretched empty ahead, red desert bleeding into purple dusk. I'd been driving for 9 hours, chasing the last shreds of adrenaline after my third energy drink, when the diner appeared. Not on the GPS, not on any map, just a sudden bloom of neon, buzzing like a trapped fly against the darkening sky. I shouldn't have stopped. The place was frozen in the 50s. Checkered floors, vinyl booths cracked with age. A jukebox glowed in the corner, playing static. No customers except an old man at the counter nursing a coffee that steamed despite the heat. The waitress had a name tag reading Mabel and a smile that didn't touch her eyes. Sit anywhere, sugar, she said. Her voice had a wet, clicking undertone, like a record skipping. The menu was handwritten. Meatloaf surprise, pie of the day. House special, regret. I ordered coffee. Mabel stared at me a beat too long. You sure? Special's free for first-timers. The old man chuckled, his coffee cup refilling itself. He don't know what he's tasting yet, Mabel. The coffee came. It tasted like cigarette ash and burnt hair. I gagged, reaching for the sugar, but the bowl was full of teeth, yellowed molars, baby incisors. Mabel leaned over, her breath reeking of raw meat. Need cream? That's when I noticed the exits were gone. No door. Just blank walls where windows should have been. The jukebox stuttered to life, crooning. You can check out anytime you like, in a warped baritone. The old man swiveled toward me, eyes leaking black sludge. Told ya, he said. Ain't no leaving once you order. Mabel's arm snaked across the counter, elongating, joints popping. She gripped my wrist, her fingers cold and boneless. Time to settle your tab. The kitchen doors burst open. Something shuffled out on too many legs, wearing a chef's hat stained with old blood. Its face was a shifting collage. My high school bully, my ex-wife, the cop who'd let me off with a warning the night I'd had one too many. Regrets on the menu, it growled, voice a chorus of everyone I'd ever wronged. I bolted for the restroom. The door locked behind me. The mirror showed my reflection, but older. Gaunt, missing 2 fingers. A scrawl on the glass read, "Don't look down." I looked. The floor was transparent. Below lay a cavern of tangled highways, endless headlights screaming toward cliffs. Drivers pounded on their windshields, mouths torn open in silent screams. My truck was down there too, circling a loop labeled 1998, take. Mabel pounded on the door. You can't stiff the bill, honey. I smashed the mirror with the soap dispenser. Shards clattered into the sink, each reflecting a different sin. The job I'd stolen, the lie I'd told my daughter, the body I'd left in a desert just like this. The largest shard showed the diner in 1957, Mabel young and trembling as the chef thing force-fed her a spoonful of swirling darkness. The door splintered. I grabbed a shard and slashed at Mabel's reaching hand. She howled, retracting. The chef loomed, its hat now my father's face. You'll make a fine special, Dad's voice dripped. I lunged for the jukebox, shard raised. It screamed as I stabbed its speakers, vomiting wires and maggots. The diner flickered, walls peeling to reveal rotten wood, the floor sagging into a sinkhole. The old man grabbed my ankle. Take me with you, he pleaded, his face melting into my own. I kicked free, leapt through the crumbling wall and hit sand. The diner collapsed in on itself, neon dying with a final hiss. Dawn broke, revealing my truck parked exactly where I'd left it. But the coffee stain on my passenger seat, it's spreading. Shaping into words, your tab's still open. And tonight, when I close my eyes, I hear the jukebox, getting louder. They say every highway loops eventually, that you'll always circle back to what you owe. Start running.
Story number 7.
The Ferris wheel lights were the first thing I noticed, pulsing red and gold through the September haze, like a spider web strung between the pines. Cedar Grove didn't have a fall carnival. At least that's what the gas station clerk said when I asked for directions an hour earlier. Ain't nothing out there but meth labs and bear traps, kid, he drawled. Yet here it was. Barton's Traveling Carnival, banners flapping in the humid wind, Calliope music sour as curdled milk. I told myself I'd just walk through, take photos for my vlog, maybe win one of those giant stuffed bears to prove I hadn't hallucinated the whole thing. First red flag, no tickets. A man in a moth-eaten ringmaster coat stood at the entrance, his face smeared with grease paint and something glistening underneath. Admission's free, he croaked, if you play a game. His breath smelled like roadkill left in a cooler. The dart throw booth caught my eye. Normal enough, pop balloons, win a prize, except the darts were scalpel sharp and the balloons, they twitched. Inside each one, shadows coiled like eels. The carny running the booth grinned with needle teeth. 3 for a scream, he said, handing me the darts. I laughed. A scream? Yours or someone else's? I nicked my thumb on a dart, blood welled, black under the carnival's UV lights. The nearest balloon burst before I even threw. What crawled out wasn't air. It looked like my mother, not my mother now, her young self from the photos Dad kept in the attic. She stumbled forward, dress rotting, eyes gouged out. You left the stove on, she rasped, voice identical to the voicemail she'd left the night the house burned down. You left me. I ran. Past the tilt-a-whirl shrieking with riders who had no faces, past a cotton candy vendor spinning pink webs around a sobbing child. The ringmaster materialized in front of me, his coat now crawling with centipedes. You owe us a game, he said, peeling off his left ear and offering it like a token. The hall of mirrors trapped me next. My reflections fractured, versions of myself old, young, dismembered. One reflection lagged a half-second behind. When I pressed my palm to the glass, it stayed there after I pulled away. Let me out, it mouthed, clawing at its side of the mirror. Let me out! I smashed the glass with a fire extinguisher. The reflection tumbled free, limbs snapping into place like a stop-motion puppet. It wore my face but moved all wrong, joints bending backward. Thanks, it giggled, sprinting into the carnival crowd. That's when the screaming started. Not the fun kind, the wet, gurgling kind. I followed the sound to the Ferris wheel, where a teenager dangled from his seat, intestines unraveling like party streamers. The shadow from the balloon swam through the air above him, now the size of a school bus. My mother's face stretched across its writhing form. Why didn't you save me? It howled, voice shaking the ground. The ringmaster appeared beside me, crunching on popcorn from a bucket full of teeth. Folks love a family reunion, he said. Blood dripped down his chin. Don't worry, you'll feed us one way or another. I tackled him. His coat tore open, revealing a chest cavity packed with cicadas and old film reels. The film showed my life, bedroom, job, gym, but in every scene the carnival lurked at the edges. My reflection in the microwave? Ferris wheel lights, the static between TV channels, Calliope music. We've always been with you, the ringmaster gurgled as I stomped his ribs into splinters. We're the itch you can't scratch. I grabbed his keys, sprinted to the generator truck, and plunged it into the fuel tanks. The explosion painted the sky gasoline rainbow. Tents melted, rides collapsed. The shadow thing shrieked, dissolving into smoke that smelled like burnt hair and regret. Dawn found me hitchhiking down Route 12. Carnival ashes stuck to my shoes. The trucker who picked me up said I looked like I'd seen the devil's backyard sale. I laughed until I choked. But tonight my bathroom mirror steamed up on its own. Words traced themselves in the condensation. You cheated. Outside, heat lightning pulses red and gold. Start running.
Story number 8.
The smell hit me first, burnt sugar and wet earth, as I stepped out of the car. Fall in Harvest Grove meant pumpkin patches, hay rides, and according to the faded billboard off Route 9, the Midwest's most maze-tastic maze. My editor wanted a fluff piece on quaint autumn traditions. I'd have rather covered a sewage leak. The maze stood at the center of Sutton Farm, its corn stalks towering 3 feet over my head, leaves rustling like radio static. A teenage girl in overalls took my $10 at the entrance, her smile sharp under a bonnet straight out of Little House on the Prairie. Stick to the path, she said, handing me a map dotted with smiley face checkpoints. Sunsets at 7. Don't want to get husked. She giggled, but her eyes stayed flat, dull black. The first wrong turn happened fast. I'd been following the map toward checkpoint B, Scarecrow Selfie Station, when the wind shifted. The corn side, stalks bending to reveal a narrow trail not on the map. At its end stood a child's red sneaker, caked in mud. A recent rain had left the field soggy, but the shoe looked dry. "Hello?" I called. "Kid? You lost?" The corn shivered. A low, wet sound echoed from the trail, a gurgle, or maybe a laugh. I pulled my press badge like it was a crucifix and followed. The trail spat me into a clearing. No scarecrows. No pumpkins. Just a rusted bathtub half buried in the dirt, its porcelain crawling with black vines. The air tasted metallic, like licking a battery. Inside the tub lay bones, small, human. Ribcage cracked open like a walnut shell. The map burst into flames in my hand. I dropped it, but the fire didn't spread. Instead, the ashes formed words on the ground. "Don't look up." I looked. The sky was gone. Cornstalks arched into a closed canopy, leaves stitching together like flesh over a wound. The maze walls began to move, stalks rearranging with a sound like grinding teeth. I ran, but every turn led back to the bathtub. The bones were closer now, femurs propped against the rim. "Help me," whispered a voice behind me. A boy stood there, maybe 8 years old, wearing a Star Wars shirt and one red sneaker. His left eye was a hollow socket, roots wriggling inside. "I'm stuck," he said, smiling with mossy teeth. "Want to play?" The corn erupted. Stalks lashed my arms, leaves slicing paper cuts as I thrashed. The boy's remaining eye rolled back, pupils swallowed by milky green. Vines erupted from his mouth, dragging him into the soil. The ground softened, swallowing my ankles as whispers buzzed from every direction. Sutton's first harvest, 1847, so hungry, bones make the soil sweet. I grabbed a cornstalk to pull free. It came loose with a wet pop, roots dripping red. The stalk writhed in my grip, its husk peeling back to reveal a face, a woman's, mouth stretched around an ear of corn like a scream. "Feeding time," she moaned, kernels bursting into fat white maggots. I bludgeoned the mud with the stalk until my legs came free. The maze convulsed, walls tightening. I sprinted, following the distant glow of orange string lights. The exit loomed, but the overalls girl blocked it, bonnet gone to reveal hair made of braided husks. "Leaving so soon?" she asked. Behind her, the Sutton Farm gift shop buzzed with families, sipping cider, oblivious. "But you haven't met Grandpa Sutton." The ground split. A skeleton erupted, draped in rotting Union Army blues, antlers grafted to its skull. It clutched a scythe made of fused femurs. The cornstalks saluted, rustling. "Harvest! Harvest!" I lunged for the gift shop, but the exit stretched away, impossibly far. The general's scythe hooked my belt, dragging me back. "Fertilizer?" he rasped, breath reeking of silage. I grabbed a lighter from my pocket, a nervous habit I'd picked up after quitting smoking, and thumbed the flame. The corn shrieked. Stalks recoiled, leaves curling like burning hair. The general howled, antlers catching fire, as I scrambled into the gift shop. Customers turned, normal faces, normal eyes. A toddler licked caramel off a pumpkin-shaped lollipop. "Call 911. I screamed, waving my burnt hands. "There's a thing in the maze." The clerk frowned. "Maze has been closed since the accident." "What accident?" She pointed to a yellowed news clipping framed by the register. "Local boy 8 disappears in corn maze. 1987. The photo showed a grinning kid in a Star Wars shirt. Outside, the maze was gone. Just a flat field, stubbled with dead stalks. I drive past Sutton Farm every October. The billboard's updated now. Experience the haunted maze. Cars pack the lot. Teenagers dare each other to enter. But I know the truth. Last week, I found a single cornstalk growing through my apartment wall. Smells like burnt sugar. And when the radiators kick on, I swear I hear them. Harvest!
Story number 9.
The road to Willow's End was plastered with sun-bleached flyers for the annual Lantern Walk, a tradition the gas clerk called real wholesome, like that Chinese festival, but with more cider. I'd planned to breeze through, snap some fall foliage shots for my blog, but the town hooked me. Quaint clapboard houses, pumpkin-lined porches, and a diner that still served pie a la mode for $2.50. The Lantern Walk started at dusk. Locals gathered in the square, each holding paper lanterns painted with names. Elias, Mary, Thomas. "Honoring those we've lost," explained Mrs. Harlow, the librarian, her own lantern scrawled with Henry 1898 to 1921. She pressed a match into my hand. "Light one for someone, dear. The dead appreciate gestures." I scribbled Dad on a lantern. The flame inside burned blue. That night, I dreamt of whispers. Not in my ears, under my skin. I woke to blisters on my palms, the same shade as the lantern's fire. The town was silent, no birds, no wind, just the creak of the B&B's porch swing. Mrs. Harlow found me at the cemetery, digging through archives for a spooky addendum to my blog. Her smile faltered when she saw the blisters. "You shouldn't have lit that lantern," she said, clutching her own, now smudged with fresh ink. Amelia, 1999 to 2023. The records told the truth. Willow's End wasn't founded in 1823. It died then. Typhoid wiped out the first settlers, their bodies stacked in mass graves where the town square now stood. But in 1921, a preacher named Elias Blair claimed he could reunite the severed thread of life. His journal, hidden under the church pulpit, detailed the ritual. Lanterns as beacons, names as invitations, a living body as a vessel. The lanterns didn't honor the dead. They hunted for them. I found the first body in the woods. A hiker, half-rotted, his skin puckered with blisters like mine. His backpack held a lantern with my name. The townsfolk surrounded me at the square that night. No pitchforks, no rage, just pity, their lanterns casting long shadows that twitched on their own. Mrs. Harlow's voice cracked. "It's your turn, dear. They picked you the moment you lit the flame." The blisters burst. Blue fire surged through my veins, cold as Arctic ice. I ran past the churchyard where Elias Blair's statue watched with hollow eyes, into the woods where shadows peeled from trees, forming figures with familiar names. Henry, Mary, Thomas. Their fingers brushed my neck, whispering, "Almost home." I plunged into the mass grave pit, shoveled dirt until my nails split. The bones were still there, charred and clustered around a rusted iron box. Inside, Elias Blair's skeleton grinned, a lantern fused to his ribcage. I smashed it. The town screamed. Windows shattered, lanterns winked out. The pursuing shadows dissolved into smoke that smelled of burnt hair and regret. I drove until sunrise, the blisters scabbing over. But last night I found a lantern on my porch. No flame, just my name, bleeding fresh ink. And under it a new word. Soon!
Story number 10.
The billboard was riddled with bullet holes. The words, "Welcome to Pine Hollow, home of America's sweetest apples." Barely legible. I'd taken a wrong turn somewhere in the Ozarks, GPS dead, and now this 2-lane road was my only tether to civilization. That's when I smelled it. Cinnamon and wood smoke, sharp as a knife. Up ahead, lanterns flickered through the trees. A hand-painted sign. Annual Apple Harvest Festival, all are welcome. I parked next to a pickup truck with a bumper sticker that read, "Honk if you're full of demons." The festival looked straight out of a postcard. Stalls piled with apples, kids bobbing for them in tin troughs, a bluegrass band plucking banjos on a hay bale stage. An old woman in a gingham apron handed me a cider cup. "First timer?" she asked, eyes crinkling. "Try the special batch." The cider tasted like liquid gold until the aftertaste hit, metallic, coating my tongue like blood. I spat into the grass. The old woman laughed, her teeth too white, too sharp. "Bine's better that way," she said. The first warning came at dusk. A boy no older than 10 tugged my sleeve. His pupils were vertical slits, goat-like. "They're going to make you dance," he whispered. "Don't let 'em pick your apple." Before I could ask, his mother yanked him away, apologizing with a hollow smile. The bonfire roared to life as stars prickled the sky. The townsfolk formed a circle, like clutching apples marked with symbols carved into their skins. A man in a stag mask thumped a drum, chanting, "Root and branch, flesh and core, what we reap we shall restore." The crowd took up the chant. The air thickened, sweet and cloying. My cider-addled brain finally registered the stall's banners, not apple butter or caramel dip, but seeds, skin, sap. The old woman gripped my arm, nails biting. "Time to dance," she hissed. They dragged me into the circle. The drum beats synced with my pulse. Firelight warped the dancers' faces, mouths too wide, limbs too long. Someone shoved an apple into my hand. Its skin bore my initials. "Bite," the crowd urged. I refused. The apple moved, roots erupting from its core, burrowing into my palm. Pain blazed up my arm as bark spread under my skin. The dancers howled, shedding human forms like corn husks. Antlers split from skulls. Claws tore through gloves. The bonfire surged, revealing the truth. The trees surrounding the clearing weren't trees at all. They were people, or what was left of them. Faces bulged from trunks, mouths frozen in silent screams. Branches twisted into limbs, apples dangling like fists. The stag mask man loomed over me, his antlers blooming with fungi. You'll grow sweet, he rasped, pressing a rotting apple to my lips. I bit, not the apple but his hand. Black sap oozed into my mouth, bitter as regret. He recoiled, howling, the roots in my palm withered. I ran, tearing through the orchard, the trees grasping branches, slicing my arms. The pickup truck was gone, so was my car. Only the billboard remained, now splattered with fresh red paint. Welcome home! I followed the road on foot. Dawn revealed a gas station I hadn't seen before, its windows boarded up. The clerk inside was human, or close enough. He took one look at my bark-stained hands and slid a shotgun across the counter. They'll come for you, he said. Always do. Only way out's to burn the grove. Why haven't you? I asked. He rolled up his sleeve. Bark veined his wrist. Planted me too deep, he said. But you? You're still tender. We hit the grove at noon, gas cans sloshing. The festival was gone, the clearing just a clearing. But the trees, I recognize the faces now. The goat-eyed boy, the banjo player, the old woman, her mouth a knot of gnarled wood. I doused her, lit the match. The scream wasn't human, wasn't tree. It was the earth itself shrieking. Fire raced through the grove, apples bursting like grenades, seeds shooting embers into the sky. The clerk collapsed, roots erupting from his chest. Finish it, he gurgled. I ran as the world burned. Made it 3 counties over before the coughing started. Black sap speckled the tissue. That was a month ago. The cough's worse. My skin itches, rough as bark. And the taste, God, the taste, like cider but sweeter. They're outside now. I see their shadows through the curtains, antlers, claws, eyes like harvest moons. They don't need to break in. I'm ripening.